The Irrational Confidence Podcast. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Irrational Confidence Podcast. We're talking college football, and we are recapping a wild Week 7. I have pulled myself out of my bed. Hard times are upon us right now as me as a fan, but I'm joined by my co-hosts. Fresh, how you doing, buddy?
We've been looking forward to Week 7 and Week 8 for, I think, maybe March, April last year, maybe even before that, like the games, the loaded slate, and this week lived up to it. What we're seeing right now, I think parity outside of Austin, Texas, because right now they are looking head and shoulders better than everybody else in the country. A lot of talent in Eugene, a lot of talent in Athens, a lot of talent in Columbus. Past that threshold, I even say there's talent in Miami, but after that, there's a lot of unknowns. Penn State looks great. They have an undefeated record, but they have not looked dominant. They didn't look very great versus USC. They just came back against a terrible football team. Still got a lot of questions there. Alabama, Tennessee have questions, obviously. We got questions about, is BYU truly the best team in the Big 12? Iowa State. Look, there's a lot of parity across the spectrum of college football. A couple of things come into play there. A lot of younger guys are playing earlier because people are worried that they might transfer. So they got to get young kids playing time. Maybe they're not ready. When in the past they might be on the depth chart a little bit lower, but now you got to get those guys in there inexperienced and having to play. You have clock situations where in the past clock would stop on a first down. Now outside of certain situations late in ball games, your clock's keeping the run, so you're not getting extra pause in the action. And we're just talent with the transfer portal, kids all over the place who are getting chances to play, making impacts. People that they didn't expect to be stars or impact players are showing up on a daily basis. And it's just causing complete chaos, unexpected results, unexpected play. And coaching, whether good or bad, is making a serious mark right now in the game. You're seeing great developments in scheme from offensive and defensive sides and really being creative how to get the best players in space. And on the other side, you're seeing coaches who are not understanding clock management. You're seeing not developing players in a time manner or playing guys who shouldn't be playing just out of respect for seniority or whatever. But it's causing this amazing thing we love, and that's college football, and that is pure chaos. We got to treasure it. We have to love it. We have to embrace it. There's always been the debate of college football versus NFL. The reason why we love college football is because it brings us chaos. We get the unknown. We get the crazy touchdowns late. We get the bouncing of the ball, the onside kicks going through the South Carolina Alabama game yesterday. That stuff happens in college game. It's not going to be flawless football. In the NFL, you're going to get some of that flawless, more execution mentality of great games down the stretch with elite quarterback play. But in college football, it is pure chaos. It is pure joy. And you live and die with every play.
All right, Fresh, let's start one area here. And I saw this recently someone put this out there. Are we on our way to a 2007-like season? And for those of you who don't remember the 2007 season, 2007 is considered like the craziest wild season. Going into the final weekend of the year, all Missouri had to do or West Virginia had to do was just win, and they were into the BCS title game. Both teams lose in historic fashion. Ohio State and LSU wind up in the Big Ten or in the BCS title game there as well. And it is considered the year that we had the most amount of parity. Is that where we're heading? Although I will say I'm differing this a little bit just because of Texas has looked clearly head and shoulders above everyone else.
I mean, that's kind of what I think everybody wants to see this 12-team playoff is just absolute chaos. In that year, 2007, Auburn was a pretty, they're Auburn at the time. They weren't as terrible as they are now. USF, the Bulls, they were not the USF team now. They were the bottom of the barrel, and they went to Auburn, Alabama, and put up a big win. And they actually, I think, got into the top 4 in the country. The Bulls were undefeated, rolling through. Georgia had a rough start, and then they took it all the way down the stretch, made a run. Those two upsets you just mentioned got them into the Sugar Bowl to play Hawaii. Hawaii was undefeated, rolling people left and right. The backyard brawl when Pitt took out West Virginia and knocked them potentially from playing on for a national championship. People in Morgantown will never let that pain go. Like that is something that sticks with them.
Yeah.
The same thing. Kansas knocks off Missouri, a rivalry game. Kansas and Missouri were good at football then, much better than they probably are right now. Knocking Missouri out of a national championship spot, like just absolute utter chaos that you couldn't even project through a sim in a video game.
Right. Fresh, I think that year sticks out in my head. Although, like I said, the thing that's preventing me from going full on, this is going to be an 07 type of season, is the Texas Longhorns there. I keep looking at Texas, and I kind of am wondering, I don't think that they're a perfect team, but I definitely think that they are the best team right now in college football after 7 weeks fresh. What are you seeing with Texas so far?
Well, first off, the domination of the line of scrimmage on both sides. We saw the way that they handled that front seven from Michigan, back early in the year, and they just continue to keep chipping away. Whether it's Majors at center, they have a great offensive lineman. I think Banks is the tackle. Defensively, they lost 2 amazing tackles last year, and somehow they've just gotten better. They got more in there now. It brought him up for UTSA as a pass rushing specialist. The way they've controlled that, and that's how college football really is still football in general is a line of scrimmage game, and they've mastered both those sides of the ball. And then from there, you got the specialists are rolling in there, Ewers or Archer, it doesn't really matter who the quarterback is. It's a vibe right now that they're playing off of, and they tasted success 2 years ago when they almost beat Alabama in Austin. You saw it when Ewers got knocked out. Then last year, going to Tuscaloosa and getting the win, going to the playoff. This year, you start just carrying to the next level. Sark knows how to win, being from a college perspective, learning under Nick Saban. I think early it was USC and Washington, a little raw. He had swagger, he had it there. Didn't have all the amazing talent he has now. Learned a lot from Nick Saban, tried to build that out. And you're starting to see that carry through with the Longhorns. They early interception versus Oklahoma. You thought, all right, here we go. Maybe the Sooners have a chance. They shook it off. Ewers got comfortable, and then boom, they were off like a shot and dominated. They can run the ball, they can throw the ball, they can tackle. It's going to be a scene on Saturday night when the Dogs come to town, and it'll be another good test for them. But I think this Longhorn team, top to bottom, is extremely well coached, and they are disciplined to allow the hype to mellow a little bit and not be overwhelmed by it.
Right. I think this Longhorn team, in order for someone to be able to beat them, is that you have to be able to be a balanced offense and be able to kind of go toe to toe for them. Because their defense is so good, it is going to take a team to score 28 to 35 points to kind of keep up with the Longhorns. You're not going to completely stop them, but if you can kind of match point for point with them, match pace with them, I think that you'd have a shot at being, again, are they the best team right now in college football? Yeah, they're the best team in college football right now. Are they an unbeatable juggernaut team that we've seen in years past, whether you're talking about, the Alabama team, the Georgia team a couple of years ago, you go all the way back to Reggie Bush and Matt Leinart team. You talk about the Miami teams that we kind of saw. I don't think they're to that level right now, but I do think that this is a very good football team.
Yeah, the Isaiah Bond leaving injured, I want to see how that plays out during the week because he is the number one target right now for Ewers. And if he doesn't suit up for the Dogs, that will raise some questions, but I still think they have the depth that can maybe facilitate. But that big game track speed to take the top off could potentially be missing if he's not ready to go.
Yeah. Well, Fresh, let's switch gears here for a second and look over at probably one of our favorite storylines that we're watching this year. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've been following along with this podcast for a while, we have been kind of banging this drum since the preseason. If he wasn't playing at Boise State, everyone would be oogling and ogling over this guy. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have not watched Boise State and Ashton Jeanty play, right, the dude had another 200-yard plus game. He is up to 17 touchdowns. Fresh, before the show started, I looked up the college football record is for 37 rushing touchdowns in a year. Jeanty has played 6 games and he has 17. He needs 20 more to break Barry Sanders. I had to look who had the rushing record for touchdowns, and it's Barry Sanders, 37. The question is, does Jeanty get to 38 touchdowns?
So now bowl games, playoff games count. If they make the playoff, that'll include a conference championship game, will be 13. That'll be the 14th game. It gives them 8 more to get 20 touchdowns. it's possible. If they win a playoff game, and if they win the first round playoff game and make it to the quarterfinals, then definitely really in range.
Yeah.
A funny part that I want to say is that it's such a gimme for him to score a touchdown that Vegas had him at an anytime touchdown with minus 6,600.
Wow.
There's really no point in making the bet. That's how much of almost a given it was. Minus 6,600 that he would score an anytime touchdown in the game for Hawaii. So
Right.
Vegas is basically saying he's got to get at least a touchdown in the game. There's no point even wasting your money to bet it because you're not really going to get much in return unless you bet an enormous amount just to win like $5.
Right. Fresh, this is one of the most remarkable plays I've seen from a running back in a long time. I'm very hesitant to say this, but is this kid, I'm trying to give a good comparison. Who would you put him as a comparison for, like, going into the pros? So we have listeners who, they're casual college football fans. They haven't watched Boise State play. Who do you look at and say this is maybe Jeanty's comparison in the NFL, or even if it maybe not an NFL comparison, maybe like in previous college years?
The first kind of player, because he's not a big clunky guy like a Ron Dane. He's not a kick returner, but I kind of see a hint of a Reggie Bush where he can do it all. He can do it through the ground. He can also do it in the passing game. Smooth hands, great, field awareness. It's something along the lines of that kind of Reggie Bush mentality where he is just a weapon on the field, and you just got to feed him the football, one way or another.
Right. I look at him and I just say, like, this guy is probably I think he's the best college back we've seen since, like, Saquon, when Saquon just had that monster year at Penn State. And I look at Jeanty and say, like, this kid, we kind of propped him up at the beginning of the year and we said, hey, he's going to be a top 5 to 7 running back. We thought you'd be in that realm. We also had the conversation about if you change the name of the jersey and instead put Boise State, you put him at any other Power 4 university, people would be oogling all over him and be like, this guy is unbelievable. He is unbelievable. I hope he wins the Heisman. I legitimately am rooting for him.
And I think right now, we never want to see guys get hurt. But with Travis Hunter getting dinged up last night, with whatever the injury was and having to sit out most of the entire game versus K-State, and him being the most serious contender, unless Quinn Ewers goes off or something like that, it's probably Jeanty's to lose. But then again, you just got to stay healthy, stay focused at the task at hand, and hopefully you kind of let him say, look, you're going to get the stats. The most important thing right now for Boise State is to win ball games and think of the future. It's not like there's not a road ahead in the past. Now there's a playoff path. So you got to find a way to, if we have the game at hand, do you pull Jeanty, save him for the stretch run, the conference championship game for the Mountain West, into a potential playoff, first round matchup? Or do you say, you know what, we're just going to run you ragged, let you go get this massive touchdown record, and then run our chances from there? Because outside of him, if Boise State goes to the playoff and he's not 100% healthy,
yeah,
they're going to have some trouble.
Right.
And that's where you have to find, like, bigger things might be at play for the Broncos. You might have to save himself from a potential record by giving him less reps or less carries down the road to save the body for bigger games when he might go on the road to Ohio State, to Georgia, to Notre Dame, to Penn State, where they might have to make a travel, to a big, hard environment against a pretty solid defense. You're going to need him to be ready to go.
Okay, Fresh. So there's a lot of craziness last night there. We're looking at a few other things as well. 2 teams that I wanted to make sure we touched on, though, Fresh, is Penn State making the huge comeback at USC. Now, we were talking a little bit off air here on this one, but you pointed out that it's not so much Penn State being 6-0, 3-0, but it really is kind of like an indication how truly bad USC is.
I think we should have seen it coming the way they started at Michigan and in that last drive at Michigan. Because Michigan, look, this is not the 2023 Wolverines. This is the 22 Wolverines, not 21 Wolverines. It's not a very good football team. And the way they got down so early, they got beat up physically. They came back because Michigan allowed them to get back in the ball game, and they made some decent plays, had some turnovers. But then just surrendering down, you have a touchdown to end the ball game. That right there, the slow start versus Wisconsin, and they should have lost that ball game, but they came back. There's kind of a false sense of security around that program. You see Bear Alexander leaving, going to sit out and redshirt the rest of the year. So you have no defensive line, stability there. It's kind of a mess. And there's really no on-field leadership. Last year, the past few years had Caleb Williams, so at least he might be quirky and whatnot, but at least he's a leader on the field. Miller Moss isn't a leader. They don't have anyone who's going to step on that field and say, hey, you know what, we need to get this done. And that lack of leadership, Lincoln Riley sure isn't a leader. He's a glorified video game controller from an offensive perspective. And the whole program is just flash, smoke and mirrors, Hollywood nonsense, and it's being revealed. And it was truly revealed when they played Penn State. Again, this time you jump out to a early lead, and you just don't have the wherewithal offensively or defensively to keep maintaining that discipline and moving forward. You let Tyler Warren, he's not exactly a speedster, dominate you in the passing game. There wasn't a receiver. Julian Fleming wasn't going off for 20 catches and 200 yards. It was Tyler Warren dominating you. You had no answer for the tight end. There's a problem defensively. We're supposed to see these answers from the guy who came over from UCLA. Outside of the LSU game to start the year, haven't seen those answers really. This USC program is in trouble, and they're getting exposed in a physical environment in the Big Ten. The losing in Minnesota, that right there is the cake. Like this program is in trouble, and I'm sure Oklahoma fans are loving it. As bad as their season might be going right now, they're sitting back and pointing and laughing at Lincoln Riley like, we told y'all, he's just a glorified offensive coordinator.
Right.
Wants to smoke and mirrors, wants to fame, but they're not tough enough in the line of scrimmage, and they're not tough enough mentally to withstand a rule of a true schedule.
Right. Penn State, though, man, I got to give them a lot of credit. They could have easily folded in that game. And again, Tyler Warren, he might not be a speedster, but he had a hell of a game for 17 catches and 224 yards. At the end of the day, that's still impressive against anybody.
He reminds me of Pat Freiermuth when he's at Penn State. He's going to be a pro. He's going to get drafted. And they're going to be that solid possession receiver. They're going to have steady hands. They're going to be able to block. They're not going to flash you. They're not going to burn someone down the seam for a big 20, 30-yard completion, but they are going to get you the first downs, maintain the game. It's just when you have that many receptions, he's the only receiving threat. Where's the adjustment from USC to make that change and get somebody on that's actually going to stop him from making plays?
Right. And the thing that worries me with Penn State, though, is their inability to run the football yesterday.
And USC's defense should have been run all over him, and Singleton and Allen not getting it going. Philosophically, they put the game in Lars' arm, and he actually beat him. That's kind of what you want to do. You want to put the game in his arm and see if he can beat you. And he torched him.
Yeah. Fresh, let's also slide over to another game that had an amazing comeback. Folks, we tried to tell you in the preview that LSU going into Death Valley, they have only lost 6 times at night since 2000. And Ole Miss had that lead, and LSU pushes that game to OT and wins in overtime, Fresh. All right, so what does this mean about Ole Miss, and what does this mean about LSU? Because now LSU, they're 5-1, 2-0 in the SEC. Their one loss is a terrible loss to a garbage USC team. Ole Miss is being exposed as kind of frauds, and you're looking at them going, "Oh, did we overhype you?" Where are you looking at? Because when I'm looking at these two teams, I don't think Ole Miss should be considered as a playoff contender anymore after 2 losses. LSU, though, is where I'm struggling to place where to kind of have them at in my mind.
Ole Miss is done. I think unless they go through and something changes philosophically, mentally, I don't know. But that Trey Harris getting taken out of that ball game, they should have still been able to win it. Jackson Dart did not look stable. The environment got to him. And
Right.
that defense, for all that they brought in, that defense still was not very good. It was lackluster, undisciplined. The offensive line couldn't play focused. It's a whole thing, and it comes back to the kind of very similar to Lincoln Riley at USC. Smoke and mirrors, flash and glitz and glamour, and not toughness. Not gritty, whether physically grit or mentally grit. They weren't prepared. Even in overtime, the center gets a holding call and then a false start back to back. At that point, you should have known the game was over. The secondary, letting the receiver run the seam on fourth down, was a third or fourth down late in the ballgame to tie it and send it to overtime. Why are we exposing the middle of the field? The guys running wide open. It was just a complete meltdown across the board for Ole Miss. And we saw it happen a little bit versus Kentucky. And again, it came back up, bubbled back up. Maybe it's because they played such a soft schedule to start the season that they weren't even tested. And that Kentucky game was kind of their first battle, and they felt they could just go, sleepwalk through and get here to LSU. We even talked about it back in August during the previews that the LSU game was going to be that first true test for them, and they were probably going to lose. And what happens? They lost. You got to give credit to Garrett Nussmeier for having that grit down the stretch. Made some big boy throws on third and fourth down, stuck the ball in there. That walk-off touchdown reminded me of 2007 Georgia at Alabama when we went to overtime. Alabama kicked the field goal right off the bat. In the first play for Georgia on offense, they went up top to Mike Anderson for a touchdown. Same thing here with LSU. First play of overtime, gave up a field goal in the first half, up top, touchdown, ball game, walk it off. Let's see where LSU takes us from now. That's a big win. They obviously are still in the race, as you mentioned. You picked it to be an SEC title game and be a playoff team earlier in the year. It sets up nice. They got to get through a Florida team, which I think they can. They're going to get Alabama in Baton Rouge. Can the team build off of this? The defense looked a little better.
Right.
Offensively, they've got some players. I think that they're a top 15 team. I think they could beat A&M. And that right there, where how's this all going to shake out? A&M still has to play LSU. A&M still has to play Texas, among others. I think LSU, if they can run forward from here, they're in the conversation for that periphery, like 12, 11 seed, if it even rolls out that way. But there's definitely a chance right now for Brian Kelly to take a team where we didn't really know much to get from them and put them in the playoff spot. But they're not perfect, but they've shown progress week in and week out.
Here's the thing with LSU that I like in this one. We have been asking for weeks for LSU's defense to show improvement, to show what we have known for years of LSU's defense to be. And last night against Ole Miss, holding them to 3 second-half field goals, including overtime, and they were able to put up 16 points themselves. And then you take a look at, too, the defensive side of the football. Got after Jackson Dart 6 sacks on that game. And then they also had, I believe, let me pull it real quick here. 9 tackles for a loss as well. You look at what that LSU defense was able to do. They were able to pressure the quarterback. They were able to get after Dart there as well. That's huge. If LSU can build on that, I like them a lot. I think that this is going to give us a huge question, though, in the final weeks of the season, because we know that Texas and Georgia are fairly confident locks for the playoff unless the wheels fall off. Like something crazy is going to happen with that. It's going to, and we're pretty certain that SEC is going to get 3 teams in, and then there's always the debate on the 4th. I feel like you have LSU, Tennessee. I'm going to put Alabama in this group too because they did not look great against South Carolina. But LSU, Texas A&M, Tennessee, Alabama, which of these 4 teams are going to be the third lock playoff team for the SEC?
And it's funny that they're all, I think there's going to be a round robin there in that situation. If you look at Alabama, Tennessee this week, Tennessee also has to play the Dogs later on. If Alabama beats Tennessee, which they have not looked good, that's 2 losses right there with Georgia still pending down the road. You don't know how that's going to play out. Alabama still has LSU coming up. That Vandy loss is going to hang, but if Vandy keeps winning, it makes them look better. And then you have A&M, who's hasn't looked fantastic, yet they dominated a terrible Missouri football team, an overrated Missouri football team. It has A&M carry that forward. And LSU, I think, has the they're the most battle-tested and gritty of the bunch. Because look at what they did. They went to South Carolina, and they were getting the brakes beat off of them. They got a couple breaks, but they found a way to just keep grinding through the game, and they won it. Same thing with Ole Miss. They were kind of in the very beginning, but they stayed in the game, and they won it. If it gets to a 4-quarter fight, I have more faith in LSU than I do Tennessee or Alabama or A&M, because they've shown and they can go and get it done, not the cleanest way, but they still win the ball game late. Alabama's second because Jalen Milroe and Ryan Williams are just phenomenal. And it comes down to that A&M Tennessee, Marcel Reese at quarterback, that Elko defense, or are we going with Nico, who not passing in attack for Tennessee is lacking something? The running game is fantastic. Dylan Sampson's great, but we're still waiting for that next year for the Vols.
Let me bring up something here, Fresh, because you raise a very interesting point. I'm just going to give you a hypothetical here. Last week in our wrap-up episode, we talked about the Big 12, and you made a great point about how, and we kind of still think this a little bit, that our biggest concern about the Big 12 getting more than 2 teams in the playoffs is the possibility of the Big 12 cannibalizing each other, and that not 3 strong teams will show up by the end of it. Because the round robin format for the remainder of this schedule, especially with those teams that we see that, I'm just going to say this. Is there a hypothetical where it really is only Texas and Georgia coming out into the playoff because of the SEC, because of that next tier? Because, again, you have Texas and Georgia probably in that 1 tier for the SEC, and then about 4 to 6 teams in that second tier in the SEC. Could that second tier completely cannibalize itself there and prevent the SEC from getting 3 teams in?
I mean, it's why we play football, right?
Right.
Like you said, like Tennessee, if they lose, that gives them second loss. It actually kind of it still feels like they have 3 losses, because that Florida game.
Right.
I don't know. Florida let him hang around. Billy Napier's, poor guy's, he's done. But if you lose Alabama, especially if you lose in an emphatic fashion to an above average Alabama team, not your Nick Saban Alabama team, and then if you lose to Georgia, heck, they could even lose to Vandy the last week of the year the way Vandy's playing.
Right.
Obviously, they're done. You look at LSU, we talked about it. They still have games ahead of them they can win or lose. But if they beat Alabama, but Alabama, you start going to all these on-site matchups, and we are creatures of the moment where this week, oh man, the team looks so good, we're going to bump them up a little bit higher. Or in our thought process, in our top 25s and whatever, but we don't look at the full body of work. And I think the committee's going to have to look at the full body of work now of, have teams changed from August 31st to December 4th or 5th? I'm trying to gauge the date on that Saturday would be. You're going to get a lot of these head-to-head matchups. And head-to-head matchups should still matter when you come to ranking the team.
Right.
I think the SEC could cannibalize itself. I think the Big 12 could cannibalize itself. The Big 10, Indiana could squeak in. Penn State's the 3rd team right now in the Big 10. And I don't think that they're a world beater, but they are a quality top 12 football team in the country. Who gives them, where's the other team come from? Because we were talking earlier. Boise State, unless everything just completely falls apart, they're going to get that group of 5 squad. Notre Dame, they just keep doing your own thing, navigate yourself, be quiet, keep the attention off of you, and you're going to be in the playoffs. That's 2 of our spots. Oregon's a lock, I think. Ohio State's going to be a lock. Georgia, Texas, where does that put me at? 4, 6 teams right there? That's half of your field. Clemson, Miami are both probably going to get in, so that puts you at 8. And then the Big 12, I think BYU, looking at the way they are right now, the rest of the schedule, BYU is going to be the Big 12 champion, or at least play in the Big 12 title game. So that right there puts you at 9. Iowa State or Kansas State or Texas Tech or Colorado or Arizona State, they're going to get one more of the spots. That puts you at 10. So these are playing 2 teams from Indiana, Alabama, Tennessee, LSU, A&M, collection of Big 12 schools. That's going to be very tough on the committee. You're going to have to look at, you have to throw out preseason rankings at that point and look at head-to-head matchups, look at the game plays you've watched on with your own two eyes. Because Tennessee at this point has not looked amazing. Look, I'm a Georgia fan. We haven't played a four-quarter game, but at least we made a little more efficient at times. Tennessee, for all the hype around Nico, we haven't seen it. He hasn't gone out and thrown for 500 yards against a true opponent. He had that game with Kent State and it was great. But where have we seen that Tennessee hype? LSU showed me more grit from Nussmeier, but that USC loss is going to hang over people's minds because we all watched it on Sunday night in Las Vegas in the opening week. Will the Alabama win over Georgia give them that edge? And how much will that? But they go, we saw them have a big lead, then we saw them go down, we saw them come back in dramatic fashion with Ryan Williams because they're going to want superstars from the playoffs too. They can get Ryan Williams in the playoffs with Jalen Milroe. Alabama's a brand. You got to think viewership numbers. Well, does that kick over something else? It's going to be whether you do BCS in the computers, do you do straight polls with sports writers, do you have a committee? There's no easy way to split hairs when it comes to this. And that's why I think we love and we hate college football the most, because right now we're basically talking about 2 playoff spots open to 12, 15 different teams, and it's all subjective reviews.
Well, I think this is maybe, and it really is tough for me because we talked when the playoffs expanded, both you and I were like, going to 12 teams. Really, I don't think 12 teams is so great. You and I were okay with them expanding the playoffs, but I think we kind of consensusly believe they should have gone to 8 first, and then maybe if you wanted to keep going to 12 or 16. And now we're seeing the fun with the 12-team playoff because you're right there, Fresh. We really do have, I would say, 8 to 10 teams that are locks into the playoff, barring something cataclysmic that just happens to them and they completely collapse. Both Ewers and Arch go down for Texas and they wind up losing 5 straight games, or something just nutty just happening that we can't foresee. I think the interesting thing that is going to make this year fun is us really debating who the last two or three teams that sneak into the playoff are going to be.
Well, we always have the debate on Selection Sunday for the NCAA tournament.
Right.
Man, how did that bubble team get in? Why does bubble team did get in? We're talking about 64 teams. But the funny part is nobody truly cares about rankings and potential bubble spots in November, December, January, February of college basketball. We always sort of get to the conference tournament like, oh man, because there's so many other things going on. You got the NFL playoffs, you got the NFL going on, college football playoff. Things are sort of just in motion where college basketball sort of just it drifts behind the scenes until Selection Sunday. We are now going to have constant weekly debates on bubble teams, on who should be that 10 to 15 range of who's that top 12, or maybe even that 9 through 15. And when we get to that 12, well, why did this team get left out? Why did this team get left out? That debate is going to be much more at the forefront every single week as opposed to college basketball, where for the most fans, it pops up that Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening after the Big Ten championship game on CBS, and like, man, how did they get out? They were 19 and 18 or 19 and 12, and they had this win, but they had this bad loss. We are going to have those debates at a greater scale every single week because it's such a fine line and there's no true equivalent merit that will say that this is the equal playing field for everyone.
Right.
It's chaos and we love it. And there's going to be some hard discussions. There's going to be some broken hearts. Just like we had who's the 5th and 6th seed not making in the 4. Now you're going to have 4 or 5 schools saying, well, why wasn't I the 11th seed? Why wasn't I the 10th seed?
Right.
We did this, we did that.
All right, Fresh, let's go to one more before we'll start to wrap up a little bit, but I got to touch on this one. Fresh, folks, if you weren't checking out us on the YouTube and the comment section for the K-State Colorado game, listen, if you're listening to this and you were one of the people that commented on the Colorado K-State game and on the video, we love you to death. We really do.
Love the comments.
We love the comments. Again, we were told that we are stupid, sound like a bunch of haters. And again, I admitted, Fresh and I, we are not the most intelligent people in the world here, but I think our level of stupidity is fairly on the normal side of things. Like we're average guys who watch a lot of college football. Fresh takes on that. Again, we got to bring it up here just because if you guys haven't seen it, you made it this far, go on to YouTube, check out the comment section. They are fantastic, guys. I really do appreciate you guys taking the time to write some on there. But, ooh.
Well, first off, if Colorado's more, Horn's okay, but it's Travis Hunter and it's Shedeur Sanders and that entire football team, folks. We all know it. If you said it was a bigger team, if it was a better team, they would be able to recover and dominate Kansas State because, Kansas State got dominated by a passing team like BYU, per the comments. Shiloh Sanders, dude's terrible. The only reason he started is because his dad's the head coach. The dude got shook by DJ Giddens. His jockstrap is still at the 40-yard line hanging out. Shepard, great number 5 receiver. The only reason he's playing because he had injuries and he had other guys, not be able to show up. It's not a great football team. You're living up to the Prime hype where Prime's going to sort of make the thing all magically fantastic. Well, you started out amazing last year. You didn't make a bowl game. You're now 4-2, and you're about to get in the meat of that Big 12 schedule. Is it a much more improved Colorado football team than it was last year? Oh, heck yeah. But it's still
a good team.
It's not an elite football team. UCF is starting to show their colors. They're a good team, but they're not an elite football team.
Right.
UCF right now starting to show they're a lot worse than they would. Yeah, they went through a hurricane this past couple of weeks. They've been dealing with some distractions, but they got beat again. So that win right there, You talk about we had to give up 100-yard rushes. Well, according to what I have here, DJ Giddens ran up, down, around y'all. Pretty without issue. 25 carries, 182, averaged 7.3 yards a carry, and had 2 receptions for 38 yards. You couldn't stop it. You couldn't stop the receivers for K-State. Avery Johnson, guy got dinged up, had a back injury, and still came back and played and kept torching y'all. You need to accept it who y'all are. Just because Prime's there and Warren Sapp's on the defensive staff, and you got KD, and you got Terrell Owens on the sideline, you got a bunch of other stars always showing up to these games. That does not make you an elite football team. You still have a serious issue with the line of scrimmage on both sides, and that's where K-State dominated you. They were going to run the football down your throat. Yes, you're better than what you have in the past 2 years. Enjoy it. Love it up. But I'll tell you right now, when Shedeur and Travis leave, you're not finding anyone to replace them. You're not going into the portal and getting another Heisman Trophy winner quarterback who's going to want to go to Boulder, Colorado without a chance to play for a playoff spot or a national championship. You're not getting a top 3 overall pick in Travis Hunter who's going to play at receiver and be your number 1 receiver and your number 1 corner at the same time. You're not going to get it. You had McClain and you ran him off. He's a 5-star recruit. Now he's at Florida. You put the fanboy stuff down for a little bit and just evaluate that you have a very good football team, but you're not an elite football team. And until you get to understand that and kids actually want to be there, and Dion stops trying to live through the portal and actually start building a legit high school recruiting class where you have multiple years of depth that you can develop over time, you're going to be okay. The portal is a plug and play. It is not a way to sustain your entire roster for year over year. And that right there is going to be the downfall.
It is to supplement your team, not to build your team on there. Fresh, I'll give them credit, man. Colorado, you think about where they came from. 2 years ago, it's a 1-win football team. And I get it. It is, if you are a fan of a team, it is, I think that you put your rose-colored glasses or whatever colored glasses you want to say on gold color for it, and you see only the positives of your team. And it's very, very difficult for people who are really diehard fans of their team to say something critical of them. You want to find an excuse. You want to find a reason that your team lost. And I'll lead in here for a second because I'll talk one more thing before we sign off for this week. But people jump in and go, oh, these people just hate our team. Man, listen, I'll be the first one to tell you, I don't have any strong feelings towards Colorado. I am here for the show. I am here for the level of entertainment. I am here for Coach Prime wants to, give all these press conferences and say all that. Sign me up. I'll sit there and watch. Again, I'm not hate watching it. I'm not like, oh yeah, it's not riling me up, but I am going to get some popcorn. I'll watch it. I enjoy watching Travis Hunter. I enjoy watching Sanders there at quarterback there because Colorado's an entertaining thing. And again, this is, at the end of the day, this is entertainment for us. It's sports, but it is a type of entertainment. I'm here for that. But again, it's being realistic about where your team is, because you really have to look at some of the team and really question, how good really are we when we go up against this level of competition? Colorado, you are a good team. You're not a great team. You're a good team. Would you probably beat roughly 65, 70% of teams in college football, all 134 of them? Yeah, probably about 60%. I feel pretty accurate in saying that. Are you going to be able to compete with the big boys? And, when you're bringing up UCF and stuff like that, come on. I put Colorado on the field with Texas or Oregon, and you're probably going to get boat raced pretty quickly in that game.
We saw what happened last year when Colorado played Oregon.
Right. So, again, bump the brakes, but again, we do appreciate you guys and love it as well as much as it sounds funny to us coming out, but we do love those comments into the YouTube channel. But that was just classic to read those, and we were having fun with you guys. Not anything serious. Good laugh. Fresh, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about what happened in Eugene there as well with the Ohio State Oregon game. I know I feel like I was trying my best to avoid it. I am, as those of you who listen, I am a very big Ohio State fan. It frustrated me. There are some things that I felt went. I hate the fact of putting. The team never should have been in position to where there's a few things that happen down the stretch of it where you call the outcome of the game questionable. You should never been in that position. You shouldn't have to raise those questions because you're in that position. With that being said, Oregon squeaks out that win. I felt like I saw online a lot of people criticizing Ryan Day. I don't put this on Ryan Day. I put this more on Jim Knowles and Jim Knowles' defense. I thought the defense was a bit conservative. I thought you played some soft zone throughout the day. You let Evan Stewart just eat you alive. And how many times did we see they were running, the wide receivers for Oregon were running option routes, sitting down in soft spots in the zone, and you just moved the ball downfield. I was waiting for the Ohio State defense to come and show out in that game. Again, it shows to me that Oregon is exactly where we thought they would be. Ohio State is still loaded with NFL talent. And again, a 1-point loss on the road to a elite level team isn't anything that I'm like, again, I'd much rather my team win, but I'm not super upset. I put the blame on Jim Knowles, but again, if it's me, I'm using this. Sometimes a loss will galvanize a team, make you better, make you tougher, and sometimes it's better to lose. And again, I look back a couple of years ago, and I'll use your team, Fresh, Georgia. I think one of the best things to happen to the Georgia Bulldogs was in that first year that they won a national title was losing in the SEC title game. I think that when they lost in that SEC title game, it motivated them in a different fashion. I think it took some truly great and guys who wound up playing on Sunday the following year. It took those guys who really unlocked a new gear where they just go, we hate this taste in our mouth. We hate this feeling. We're going to go even harder for the next couple of weeks and then just blow everyone out. That's why I'm hoping Ohio State recovers in this. But again, Oregon showed that they truly belong in that conversation of being an elite level team. Dylan Gabriel, again, we saw the magic that we originally saw at UCF. We saw the magic that happened at Oklahoma last year. And again, he played lights out for him. He concerns me as a quarterback overall, but I can't take away everything that he did this past weekend.
I mean, Dylan Gabriel, less athletic than Bo Nix. When he's beaten Texas last year and he's beaten Ohio State this year, the kid has it's an old man term, but moxie to just find ways to win. And it's impressive. Ohio State, Before I move on to Ohio State, Dan Lanning finally getting that big win. You lose to Washington a few times the past couple of years in big games where we're kind of waiting for a Duck team under him to take that next step. It's a 1-point win. It's a win. You enjoy it. You love it. You're guaranteed basically a spot in Indianapolis now for the Big Ten title game. I don't really see how, unless it, like you said, unless it falls apart and you hit your high and out and sort of taper off, you basically have a spot there in the playoff and you have a spot now in Indianapolis for a Big Ten title. How do you keep that team focused going forward? Because you just beat Ohio State. That win can't be your season though. You have got to take that as, all right, we're here. Now, how do we get better and move forward? Because if you end your season right there with a win by 1 point over Ohio State in Eugene on October 12th, that tells me more about the program. Like, how do they respond? We see them on game day where Nick Saban and Pat are going back and forth. Like, what's better to happen? You mentioned it. The loss is probably better to wake everybody up and maybe realize some flaws you have as opposed to getting a win, because now you're like, oh, well, we won. We're great. Look what happened. Alabama beat Georgia. They go to Vandy and they lose. How does Oregon grow and mature going forward? The other side from Ohio State, you lost by a point on October 12th to a top 3 football team in the country on the road. Would I want to see more from Henderson and Judkins down in the ground game? Do I want to see, a little more game awareness from Will Howard? Yeah. But you know what? It showed that you're ready and the team is fired up and the team is focused, and it gives you teachable moments to grow and go forward. Ryan Day's been under a lot of pressure in Columbus the past few years. He's 1-7 versus top 5 teams lately.
2-8.
That's good. 2-8 or what was 1-7. I think 2-8 in his career, but 1-7 his last 8. That's a lot of pressure weighing on your shoulders. This loss is only going to carry a bit more. And I think what he needs right now, it's not Chip Kelly. It's not Jim Knowles. It's players leading the football team. We look back at some of the national championship teams in the past, some really good football teams. The coaches in some cases got out of the way and they were player-led. Who on that roster for Ohio State is going to be the person, be that voice in the locker room to get them to hold them accountable? You mentioned the Georgia team in 21. Nakobe Dean, Nolan Smith, Stetson Bennett, they were voices in that locker room. They were voices in practice that pushed that team. It wasn't just the coaches doing it. It's the players motivating, holding each other accountable, and going forward, hitting the extra rep, being more disciplined in film study. Who is going to be that leader? I think we're talking about Ohio State. I have same concern about the Georgia football team here in 2024. Who are the player leaders on the field who are going to hold each other accountable and drive home the goal to win the football game? When things aren't looking good, who is going to look everyone in the eye and they're all going to be like, all right, I believe that guy. I truly respect him. He's challenging me. I'm going to step up and go get it done. Player leaders need to be more prevalent on these football teams. Now we're midway through the season. We kind of know who we are. Who is going to be that voice in the locker room to guide the team and hold them accountable the rest of the season? Not just for Ohio State, not just for Georgia, but for any football team. Because right now, it's a stretch run. You kind of know where you're at this point. Who can finish out the drill, get to the first week of December, play for a conference title, and then get yourself in a playoff spot? But you've got to survive the gauntlet down the stretch.
Yeah. It's all I'm going to say on that. It's tough enough. I did get myself up and said, you know what, I am going to do this. But again, I am going to mute myself for a while to again, this is probably the most I'm going to talk about it in public right now. So not going to have
flush it and move on. Flush it and move on.
I flush it and move on. Some people out there want to continuously bring it up though, but we'll see how we go forward here. Fresh. That's all we got for week number 7. Fresh. Hey, everyone, make sure you're checking out spinablesports.com because Fresh has got a new article up there about projecting the playoff seeding right now, halfway through the season. We got a great week number 8. Before we head out of here, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, get notified every single time we drop a new episode. Hit us up on the socials. We're on the X. We're doing all that stuff as well. We engage with you all. We're going to put out a poll for week number 8. Special thanks to our producer, Drew. Without him, none of this is possible. And again, like I said, make sure you're visiting spinablesports.com. Yep, that's spinablesports.com because the Irrational Confidence Podcast is part of spinablesports.com. Fresh, that's all I got. I'm ready to move on, get another cup of coffee here and get on to the rest of my week.
All right. Another exciting weekend in the books. A lot more games. Every game means more going forward. Engage with us. Hit us up. Let us know what's going on. And we'll talk to y'all next week in our Week 8 preview. With that, bye, y'all.